Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to another episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, but I'm ready to get right back into it and talk about sports. So much to get into, including a fantastic finish in the gold medal game between the United States and Canada. What does this mean for the United States? And if you're Canadian, if you root for Canada, how you feeling this morning? I just want to check up on you. Other things I want to get into, I will have my updated bracketology. Some teams help their case for making it into the NCAA tournament. We've got NBA talk. The NFL Combine is this week. Spring training underway. We got the World Baseball Classic next week. It's going to be a jam-packed show. Let's go ahead and start it off with the United States winning gold for the first time since 1980. It's been a great week for Team USA. We had the women win in overtime last week over Canada. And going into this gold medal game, I did not have a whole lot of expectations for the United States. I thought that they'd have a pretty good showing. I remember the 2010 gold medal game in Vancouver where the United States got their heart broken. They lost in overtime to Canada. And going into this game, I knew that Canada was playing without Sidney Crosby. Canada was absolutely loaded this year with guys like Connor McDavid and Celebrini Macklin. But the United States has some scrappy players like Austin Matthews, Keith Tkachuk. But this game, which was on at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I admit I watched it right before church, put it on pause, and I watched the rest of it once church was over. This was one of those where you're at the edge of your seat. You're watching it from start to finish. The United States get the early goal in the first period, and then Canada ties it in the second period. And this was 1-1 going throughout the third period. And Canada had a 5-on-3. Canada had an open net twice, and they could not get it done. And then the hero for the United States was Jack Hughes with that goal in overtime. How fascinating was that call by Kenny Albert? And then Jack Hughes was missing some teeth, and having the flag draped over him with his bloody mouth was just an iconic moment. And say what you want about Canada, they were a very formidable opponent. This was a great game, could have gone either way, but the hero of the game had to have been the goaltender, Connor Hellebuck, who had 42 saves, and the United States wins gold. Now, there's a Canadian player, Nathan McKinnon, saying, you be the judge. Who was the better team? Well, Nathan, I'm here to say it's not figure skating. The United States won. Obviously, if you thought that your team was better, then you should have had those goals in the third period. And Canada should have put this game away. But the United States comes out on top. And when you look back at history and gold medals, this is the third gold medal the United States has had. They last won a gold medal in 1980 with the Miracle on Ice. And this team that has NHL players, by the way, I'm so glad they brought NHL players back. We have not had that since Sochi in 2014. And clearly, the United States has got some great players. I was really excited for the United States. And I know that the casual sports fan was pretty excited too. There was a lot of people that were either watching this Sunday morning or they were watching it on replay. And it's a great time to be an American. Now, if you are from Canada, I know that it's got to hurt because you felt that you were the better team. And Canada lost in the gold medal game in the women's hockey last week. And now they lose in men's hockey. It's got to be demoralizing if you are from Canada. So that puts a bow on the Winter Olympics. And Norway ends up winning the most medals. They had the most gold. They had 18. The United States had 33 total medals, including 12 gold. They finished second. And then in third was Italy with 30 goals. And now the next Winter Olympics is going to be in the French Alps in 2030. The next Summer Olympics is going to be in Los Angeles in 2028. And I tell you, I'm excited about the World Cup coming up this summer. But the Winter Olympics should bring this country together. And I admit, I did not watch a whole lot of the Winter Olympics. I didn't see any of the figure skating. I didn't see any of the speed skating or the alpine skiing. I saw a glimpse of my favorite sporting event, which is the bobsled, mainly because when I was a kid, Herschel Walker was part of that bobsled team in 1992. But I'm glad that the Winter Olympics, was a success. Curling was pretty interesting. Curling kind of gives you that hope that anybody can go out there and be a curling star. But once again, congratulations to the United States on winning gold. And it is time to celebrate. It is one of those moments that will live in sports history. Now, when it comes to upsets, this doesn't even compare to the Miracle on Ice. Still to this day, that is the greatest upset in sports. And I know I've had segments before where I talk about what are the greatest upsets in sports. I don't think anything will ever topple Miracle on Ice. Not Georgetown Villanova 1985, not Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson in 1990, or the New York Jets beating the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III. I don't think there's anything that could top Miracle on Ice. Was this different that Russia wasn't in it? Yeah, it felt a little different, but Canada was the best team, and they were the favorites to win gold. So that's why this has got to feel really special, especially waking up this morning. You're pumping your chest. You're excited for Team USA. They win the gold medal, and it has been awesome. All right, it's another week. It's time for Bracketology, and this is according to Joe Lenardi. Looking at the bracket right now, Duke, Michigan. All right, it's time for Bracketology 101. And these are the updated brackets according to Joe Lenardi. By the way, wasn't that Duke-Michigan game fascinating? We need to have more non-conference matchups like that this late in the regular season. But the number one seeds are Arizona, Houston, Duke, and Michigan. The projected number two seeds are Iowa State, UConn, Illinois, and Purdue. The projected number three seeds is the defending champion Florida, Gonzaga, who's always in this, Texas Tech, and Kansas. Because name brand, Kansas is in a tough Big 12. So they're going to give them the nod, even though Peterson is kind of playing laxy-daisy right now. But in my opinion, the Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball, and it's not even close. You look at the teams that the Big 12 have with Arizona, Kansas, Texas Tech. You have Iowa State. You got BYU. They are absolutely loaded. I'm looking down the standings right now. I mean, you talk about right now the team that's the best, Arizona, then Houston. They're going to play each other, and that's going to probably determine who's going to be the number one seed. You got Kansas, Iowa State, Texas Tech. I mean, that at the top of the Big 12, I know the bottom of the Big 12 with Utah, Kansas State, Baylor, and Oklahoma State, it just doesn't look all that great. But I'm telling you, the teams that could win this thing is probably going to come out of the Big 12. I honestly think that the Big 12 has the best conference in college basketball. Now for the ACC, Duke is the number one overall seed, followed by Virginia, Miami, NC State. There's going to be some big games coming up on the schedule that I am really looking forward to. But how about the SEC? Auburn getting it done, getting a win over Kentucky. They snap a 5-game losing streak. Georgia ends up beating Texas. I think Georgia with a 19-8 schedule and 7-7 in the SEC. I think the Georgia Bulldogs get into the SEC tournament in back-to-back years for the first time since the Jim Herrick years back in 2002. We've got a huge slate of games tonight. 2 top 25 teams. Louisville taking on North Carolina. Houston taking on Kansas. Are you kidding me? Sign me up for that. Look, I know football's done and over with. We got spring training going on in Major League Baseball. Why not sit on the couch and watch some college basketball? Auburn, right now, it's safe to say that win over Kentucky might have put Auburn in the tournament, but they got to beat Oklahoma tomorrow. They're playing Oklahoma, who has a losing record in Norman. If Stephen Pearl wants to feel safe, I don't think he's on the hot seat just yet, but there's grumblings among Auburn fans, especially after losing 5 straight games, and Auburn has a 15-12 record. You know, he's done a great job recruiting, but they're just not playing well as a team. And that is a cause for concern. Looking at the remaining SEC schedule, Kentucky taking on South Carolina. Kentucky, they're not necessarily a lock to get into this tournament. If they lose to South Carolina, I think Kentucky becomes a bubble team. And then Tennessee at Missouri. That's a massive game tonight. That's going to be on the SEC Network. On Wednesday, Georgia takes on Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's been the surprise team of the SEC. You got Florida and Texas in Austin. If Texas wants to get into this thing, they got to beat the defending champs. That would be a huge win on their resume. Arkansas taking on Texas A&M. Alabama taking on Mississippi State. Mississippi State's got a losing record, and LSU and Ole Miss. That's going to be Wednesday's slate. Let's take a look at some games over in the ACC. So we have, like I mentioned, Louisville, North Carolina today. Tomorrow we got Duke, Notre Dame, Miami, Florida State, Wake Forest, Boston College, NC State, Virginia. On Wednesday, Pitt and Stanford. And then SMU, Cal. That could be a game that could be for a possible spot in the NCAA tournament. And then Georgia Tech, they have had a dismal season, 2-13 in the ACC. They host Florida State. The only way they get into this tournament if they go on a run like none other, because they're going to end up playing the most rounds in the ACC tournament. They would have to get so hot. They'd have to get in this tournament. But I think that it's time to let Damian Stoudemire go. He's just not getting it done. Look, I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I'm just saying there's an expectations that you have to meet at Georgia Tech. This is point guard U. This is Bobby Crimmins. Everybody knows Georgia Tech as the premier program in college basketball. The same team that went to the Elite Eight in 85. Lethal Weapon 4 in 1990 with the Final Four team. That championship team with Will Bynum and Jared Jack that lost to UConn in 2004. They've had great players from the NBA like Chris Bosh and Darius Favors and Travis Best and Stephon Marbury. And I know I'm going on and on and on. John Sally, Mark Price. I mean, come on. Their expectations is a lot higher. Georgia Tech should always be competing for an ACC championship, and their season has just been terrible this year. So let's take a look at the bracketology. Because this is according to Joe Lunardi. The last 4 byes, now these are teams that are projected to get into the tournament and not have to play in the first round. So more likely they're 10 seeds. UCF, Texas A&M, Auburn, and Ohio State. So Auburn's safe right now. According to Joe Lunardi, Auburn is in the tournament. Your last 4 in. These are the teams that are going to be playing in that first round. More than likely an 11 seed, Santa Clara, Missouri, UCLA, and USC. I like how there's 2 Big Ten teams in here. They got to play such a tough schedule. I could see where they let UCLA and USC get into this thing. All right, your first 4 out. These are the teams that are more likely going to be number 1 seeds in the NIT. These teams are ranked 69 through 72 that just missed the cut. TCU, San Diego State, New Mexico, and VCU. And the next 4 out, Cal, Virginia Tech, Seton Hall, and West Virginia. Right now, the Big Ten is projected to have the most teams that get into the tournament, but I still think the Big 12 is the best conference as far as top heavy. They got 7 teams that are projected to make it into the NCAA tournament. The SEC is tied with the Big Ten with 11. ACC has got 8, but still, I'm giving a lot of love to the Big 12. I think the Big 12 at the top with Arizona, Houston, Iowa State, and Kansas. All 4 teams could be Final Four teams. And then you got BYU that has one of the best players that's projected to be a lottery pick. So you know that the Big 12 is bringing it. And that's how I feel about bracketology. All right, let's talk National Basketball Association. The Atlanta Hawks were able to get a big win over the Brooklyn Nets last night. And they came back from 11 down. I think that Jalen Johnson is a star. I think the Hawks right now, who are 28-31, they're right now in the 9 spot for the play-in tournament. Jalen Johnson scores 26 points. They take on the Washington Wizards, their next 2 opponents, but I highly doubt that Trae Young is going to play in both of those games. And if you want to make the playoffs, you've got to beat the Washington Wizards. They're 16-40. You talk about the bottom of the league. You cannot lose to teams in the bottom of the league. I want to see the Atlanta Hawks have a little bit of consistency. And if you look at the landscape of the NBA, yeah, the Detroit Pistons are the best team in the Eastern Conference. But has Detroit proven themselves as a championship team? Yeah, Cade Cunningham looks like he could be a candidate for MVP. He's having a fascinating year. Jalen Duren is a great post player, averages a double-double every night out. Tobias Harris always steps up when it comes to being that championship caliber guy. Duncan Robinson, they got some good pieces, but I don't necessarily think that the Detroit Pistons have championship pieces. The team to look out for is the Boston Celtics, especially when Jason Tatum comes back. What they have done, you got to give Coach of the Year to Joe Mazzulla. He has been absolutely off the charts. Jaylen Brown averaging 29 points a game. You have Peyton Pritchard, Derek White. You've got that top group that knows how to win in clutch situations. I think that the Boston Celtics could get it done. I'm pulling for the Knicks. I think that the Knicks are a team that everybody wants to see get to the NBA Finals just because the Knicks are not a team that a lot of people dislike. There's a big fan base there, and they have been in purgatory for decades. And for them to be this good, the New York Knicks have all the right pieces. Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, OG Anunoby. They got some good pieces. I never agree with them firing Tom Thibodeau, but Mike Brown, pretty good coach. You don't think the Sacramento Kings miss Mike Brown, who led them to the playoffs? I mean, come on. And the Kings is another story. I can't believe that I'm even talking about that. I did happen to watch the NBA Showcase game yesterday, because I was getting my car done, so I had time to kill. And in the waiting room, they had the Cleveland Cavaliers, who now have James Harden. That looks weird. Taking on the OKC Thunder. And I'm here to say, I know we've had 7 champions in the last 7 years, but I think the Oklahoma City Thunder can repeat. They look that good. They didn't even have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Jalen Williams, their top 2 scorers, and yet they still won. They're doing it with guys like Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hardenstein. They've got role players that know what it takes to win, and I think that OKC is probably going to go back-to-back. And if you look at the landscape of the NBA, the Warriors are depleted. That dynasty is over. You look at the worst team in the league, it's the Sacramento Kings. They've lost 16 games in a row. I want to actually pivot and go to the Sacramento Kings, because what happened? What happened to my beloved Kings that was the greatest show on court in the early 2000s, only for them to fall flat on their face here in 2026? What happened? What happened to the Sacramento Kings? They're the worst team in the NBA, and they shouldn't be. But they do have some major injuries. Major injuries like Domantas Sabonis. Trading away De'Aaron Fox. They got DeMar DeRozan. I'm not 100% convinced that Russell Westbrook is a cancer in the locker room. But when you have Zach LaVine, DeAndre Hunter, and Domantas Sabonis all out for the season, it is just terrible. It's terrible for the Sacramento Kings right now. I can't believe that they just continue to underachieve. And I'm disappointed as somebody who was a Sacramento Kings fan, still is a Sacramento Kings fan. That's somebody that I do root for. I root for the Sacramento Kings as often as I do. I mean, because I did live up there. They did have that 1 year, the 1 year in the last 21 years that they made the playoffs. I'll give you that. That was Mike Brown's first year. I never understood why they fired Mike Brown. They fired Mike Brown. They went 40 and 42 last year. And look, I like Doug Christie as a player. I really did. He was a great player. I don't think he's a good coach. 12 and 46. Are you kidding me? I don't understand. And if you look at when they let Rick Adelman go in 2006, Eric Musselman, Reggie Theus, Nat, Westball, Smart, Malone, Corbin, George Karl, Dave Jerger, Luke Walton, Alvin Gentry, Mike Brown, and now Doug Christie. I just don't get it, and I'm still trying to figure out what went wrong. I'll tell you what went wrong. They whiffed on so many lottery picks. They drafted Marvin Bagley III when Luka Doncic and Trae Young and DeAndre, they were all available. They could have at least got Trae Young, but they got Marvin Bagley III, and they had a chance to get Luka Doncic. So I'm kind of salty when it comes to the Sacramento Kings because I did fall in love with them in the early 2000s when I lived in Sacramento from 1997 to 2005. That was when the Kings were in their prime. And they were the greatest show on court, and they were fantastic. And they should have won the championship in 2002. Still talking about that to this day. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears. Let's talk NFL Combine. That's right. Look, there's not a whole lot going on today. Today is kind of the psychological tests, the evaluations. They're going to take the Wonderlic. They're not going to actually work out on the field until Thursday. So that's when they have the defensive linemen, linebackers. Friday is going to be defensive backs and tight ends. Saturday, quarterbacks, although Fernando Mendoza is not going to throw. Wide receivers, running back. And then Sunday, offensive linemen. All right, let's go ahead and pull that mock NFL draft that I pulled up. This is according to NFL.com. With the number 1 overall pick, the Las Vegas Raiders are expected to take, in my opinion, the only quarterback that's going to go off the board in the first round, Fernando Mendoza. Does he have the arm strength like a Joe Burrow, like a Cam Newton? Not necessarily, but he's got all the intangibles. He's got leadership quality. I'm wondering if the Raiders are going to be the best fit for him. I know that they got a brand new coach with Clint Kubiak, but I see him going to the Raiders. This is a no-brainer. The next player, the Jets are on the clock at 2. Obviously, trading away players like Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner. The Jets are really hurting for defense, but they got holes everywhere. They need a quarterback. They need weapons. They need offensive linemen. And Aaron Glenn is really going into his second season. He's being set up for failure. You just saw Sam Darnold win a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks. The Jets have to be kicking themselves right now. Aaron Rodgers, he's now with the Steelers making it to the playoffs. The Jets need a quarterback, but they're not going to get a quarterback here. I think they get David Bailey, the edge rusher at Texas Tech. They finished 31st in sacks, but they had 0 interceptions. Yes, that is true. Aaron Glenn was a DB. Why not get Caleb Downs here? Caleb Downs kind of reminds me of Jamal Adams a little bit. They need that hard-hitting safety who can actually have that vision like a middle linebacker. Caleb Downs would be the player, but I don't think he's going here. Arizona at number 3, you need to protect Kyler Murray if he does come back. Go get the other right. Go get a bookend for Paris Johnson. You've got the left tackle Paris Johnson already locked up. Go get Francis Malunga from Miami. So you've got your tackles just ready for the next 10, 15 years. Tennessee, I like this pick, Jeremiah Love. They feel like they've missed a lot from, Derrick Henry now with the Baltimore Ravens. I think that Jeremiah Love is a game changer. He's going to be a playmaker, kind of like when the Falcons got Bijan Robinson. The Tennessee Titans, I don't think they have to worry about defense. They just need a running back to help the ground game, to help Cam Ward develop. I like Robert Saleh as a coach here. I think that the Tennessee Titans are going to go get a playmaker in Jeremiah Love. The New York Giants, you just need an offensive lineman to protect Jackson Dart. Spencer Fano. And of course, this is a mock draft according to NFL.com. There's so many mock drafts out there. Mel Kiper. You don't have Matt Mayock anymore, but you have like USA Today. You got NFL.com. You got CBSSports.com. All right, I'm shocked that the Browns at number 6 would take Arvell Reese. I didn't think Arvell Reese was going to fall this far in the draft. I thought Arvell Reese was going to be the number 2 player coming out of Ohio State. But yeah, well, you got the Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett. Why not get some more defense to help and build that defense? Because Todd Monken knows offense. So your defense is going to be set. Let Todd Monken call the plays or whatever he does. I think the Browns will be fine. I'm not 100% sure that they are going to have Shedeur Sanders as their starting quarterback in 2026, but we'll see. The Washington Commanders, this is a team that could have the biggest turnaround in NFL history. If Jaden Daniels comes back and he is healthy, if the Commanders get Caleb Downs here, that defense is going to be scary. I know there's talks that Deebo Samuel wants to test free agency, possibly a reunion in San Francisco. But the Washington Commanders were supposed to be a team that was supposed to be one of the top teams in the NFL. But Jaden Daniels got hurt, and what can you do? They went to the NFC Championship 2 years ago, and now he got hurt. All right, the Saints, Sonny Styles, Ohio State linebacker. All right, at 9, the Kansas City Chiefs, man, they could go numerous places here. You know the Kansas City Chiefs are going to bounce back and make the playoffs next year, especially if Patrick Mahomes is going to be ready week 1. Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver from Arizona State. And then finally, the Cincinnati Bengals. Still a lot of question marks whether or not Trey Hendrickson is going to come back, but why not get Reuben Bain Jr., the edge rusher from the Miami Hurricanes? And, of course, this is only the top 10 picks. The NFL draft's not until April. We got plenty of time to talk NFL draft, NFL free agency. I just wanted to throw that out there because we got the NFL Combine that's happening this week. All right, we got spring training, Major League Baseball happening right now. The World Baseball Classic is happening in a couple of weeks. I'm excited about that. The Major League Baseball opener is going to be March the 25th. The San Francisco Giants are taking on the New York Yankees. Yeah, definitely sign me up for that. That's actually one game that I'd be okay with just watching it. Because, yeah, I don't really watch a whole lot of baseball games. But that would be kind of cool to watch. I'm telling you, I'm a huge Giants fan and just don't really care for the Yankees. So I think that would be a huge watch. And if you look at the schedule for Major League Baseball, it seems like they're making these openers just more and more earlier in the calendar year. It used to be opening day was like that first weekend in April. And now opening day, March the 26th. And by the way, the NBC is going to have Major League Baseball, which is actually going to be pretty cool. It's going to bring me back to my childhood with Bob Costas, Bob Euchre, Joe Morgan. Obviously, I think Mike Tirico is going to be a great play-by-play announcer for baseball. I think that he's going to be that showcase play-by-play announcer for Major League Baseball. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is going to be a great Major League Baseball season. Locally, before I close, the brackets are out. Catch the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show. Myself and Thrip Behringer, we will talk about that. I'm not going to talk about any local stuff just because I want to save all that for the Georgia Alabama Sports Live show. It's been a fun show. Make sure that you follow us on the socials. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram, the X, everywhere you can find the podcast on Apple and Spotify, iHeartRadio. It's another successful episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. I might be back next week. I don't know. I got to look at my schedule. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next time.